It's Dr. Cassie Smith, and welcome to Back to the Basics, a simple approach to health in the modern world. I appreciate you taking the time to join me today and hopefully learn ways that could help you improve your health. The modern world has left little time to focus on health and wellness. I hope to give you some quick and simple ways to be well and live your best life. Hi guys, welcome back to this episode of Back to the Basics. I am so glad that you joined me today. This is episode 7 and I have a really special guest today. So today my guest is Drew Manning. And some of you guys may know him. He's a New York Times best-selling author of the book Fit to Fat to Fit. He's the creator of Fit to Fat to Fit, the TV show on A&E, and the creator of Fit to Fat to Fit. He's been on shows like Dr. Oz, GMA, The View, and so many more. He's on a mission to bring more empathy to the fitness industry through his brand called Conscientious Fitness. So I'm so happy to have you today, Drew. Thank you for coming on. I was just telling him before the show, the way I found him was through my friend Jacob. My dear friend Jacob follows him and loves him. And so he was like, you have to get him on the show. And he has a very interesting story. So I'm going to let him kind of tell you guys about his story, and then we're going to pick his brain.
Let's do it.
So tell us about your story. Like, how did all this get started? How did you go from fit to fat and then back to fit? Like, what prompted all this?
So this all started back in 2011, but even before that, a little bit of a backstory before that, a little bit about me. I grew up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters, and we all played sports. So I grew up playing American football and wrestling from a very young age. And so naturally, because of that, I was always in shape. I was always fit ever since I was a kid. Fast forward to 2009 and became certified as a personal trainer because I was passionate about health and fitness. And so here I was, someone who had never been overweight a day in my life, trying to help people who had been overweight pretty much the majority of their life. And there was an obvious disconnect between me trying to help them and thinking in my mind, it's so easy. You just eat healthy food, you go to the gym, boom, it's not that hard. But my clients kept struggling with sticking to the meal plan and staying consistent and having discipline and willpower to, eat healthy food versus junk food. And I would get frustrated with my clients back in the day of why is it so hard for you guys just to do the things that seem so simple and easy for me to do? You should be able to do it as well. And so I had a client at the time who was my brother-in-law, and I struggled. I would get frustrated with him. And one day he told me, he's like, you know what, Drew, you don't understand what it's like for me or for people like me. You've never been overweight. For you, it's always been easy. And I actually was like, I agree with you. I don't understand why it's so hard. And I couldn't understand why he struggled. And so that conversation led me down this path of thinking what can I do to gain a better understanding so that I could better help him? And for whatever reason, the idea of getting fat on purpose kind of entered my mind, and this light bulb went off, and it made sense. It almost felt like a calling, like I was being called to do this crazy experiment. And so anyways, I was married at the time, and my wife was pregnant at the time. And she's like, so you're telling me we're going to have junk food in the house? Because I was more of the health nut back then. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to do this experiment. She's like, okay, I think you should do it. So, fast forward to when I started this in 2011, the idea was for 6 months, no exercise, eat an unrestricted diet. And I'll talk about what I ate to gain 75 pounds in 6 months. And it was one of the hardest, most humbling things I've ever done. And it totally changed my perception of what I thought it took to transform. And it humbled me. And it just showed me how wrong I was. And so we'll start there. That's kind of my Fit to Fat to Fit story in a nutshell.
Holy cow. Okay. So pretty fit your whole life. 2009, you're working out, or you're working with being a personal trainer. And then you decide when you get frustrated with your brother-in-law, you're going to gain some weight. Did you have a number in mind, like 75 pounds, or were you just like, I'm going to just not exercise? And what was did you have any idea you would gain 75 pounds in 6 months? I guess, let me ask you that.
No, I was expecting to maybe gain 50 to 60 pounds. 10 pounds a month is pretty, I think doable, I would say, I guess. I've never done this before, but I was like, yeah, 10 pounds a month, 60 pounds in 6 months. But I definitely overachieved in that area and ended up gaining 75 pounds in 6 months time.
every woman that's listening to this right now, their jaw is on the floor. So 10 pounds a month is a lot of weight to gain, right? I mean, we will lose our mind. Although women's weight does fluctuate, but I mean, if a woman gains 10 pounds, she's losing her mind. So if you're going to give us a little bit of education. I know this because I'm a doctor. I know how to figure out weight with calories. But if you're going to gain 10 pounds in a month, how many calories over do you have to eat in order to gain a pound every 3 days? Ballpark.
Ooh, wow, that's a really good
question.
Do
you know that?
No one's ever asked me this because it's like what 3,400 calories is equal
35.
To 3,500.
3,500. So it'd be 1,200 calories in excess. You would have to eat every day in excess of your basic metabolic rate, right? To gain weight. So that's a lot. That's a lot of food.
I ate around 5,000 calories per day of highly processed junk food on a daily basis. But I didn't.
How did you feel? How did you feel? I want to know that.
It felt fun. I'll be honest. It felt fun in the beginning. It was like a kid in a candy store moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can go to the grocery store and just skip the produce section and go down the cereal aisle and the snack aisle and just get all these delicious foods that we have here in America that are super cheap and affordable. I mean, let's be honest. This processed food, I'll be honest with you, it tastes freaking delicious. It's designed to be hyper palatable and to be addictive. So Cinnamon Toast Crunch twice a day, things like white bread, white pasta, juices, granola bars, chips, cookies, crackers, Hot Pockets, SpaghettiOs, Top Ramen, things like that we have here in America. Those are the foods that I ate for 6 months straight. And yes, it was fun in the beginning. About 3 weeks in, it gets boring and you feel lethargic and you feel run down and digestive issues, sleep issues, which affects your hormones, which affects your energy levels, affects your personality. And I was in way over my head. It was way harder than I thought it was going to be totally honest with you.
Okay. So 3 weeks in, you start getting lethargic. Well, so you start and you're like a kid in a candy store. Feel great. And then 3 weeks in, you're lethargic and you said you have GI issues. You can't sleep. Your energy's bad. Your mood's bad. That is every patient that comes to me. So that's why I love this because I mean, I'm so versed in hormones and metabolism. And I will tell you that unfortunately people get in this headspace where they just get used to that, right? Like they're like, I'm tired. And, I give a lecture to physicians and I tell them, I list all these GI symptoms and it's like acid reflux and constipation and diarrhea and, all these things. And I'm like, skin issues, who here has this? And almost everyone raises their hand because they all have GI issues from all the crap that they eat. Right. Yeah. And then, it affects your sleep so much and your mood. And so that happens at 3 weeks in. At this point, you've probably only gained 10 pounds, not a ton, right?
Yeah, not a ton. I think the first month I gained the most, probably I think around 20 pounds the first month.
Holy cow. Because you had a lot of water weight probably, right?
A lot of water weight. Yeah, it wasn't pure fat. But,
okay, so 1 month you're at, what mentally was going on with you? This is like from a woman's standpoint, we're all dying. So if I gain 20 pounds in a month, I'm mentally I'm done. I'm not coming out of my sweatpants. I don't want you to touch me. Mentally, were you okay because you knew you were doing this, or how did you feel?
This was the surprisingly hardest part of the journey was the mental and emotional aspect, because you have to understand for 31 years of my life, I was 31 back then, I'm old now. I had created an identity around my body image as my self-image. So in my mind, I was Drew the fit guy. So for the first time ever being overweight, going out in public I'll be honest with you, I freaked out. Like I didn't know how to handle it. I was so uncomfortable, even just being 20 pounds overweight, because like you said, 20 pounds on me, maybe to everyone else, people were like, oh, Drew, you look normal now. Right. But for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was 50 pounds overweight with just 20-pound weight gain. And I wanted to go up to strangers in public and explain to them like, hey, I'm not really overweight. This is just an experiment. Here's my before picture. This is what I normally look like. I just want to tell you this, even though I don't know you, because I was so uncomfortable for the first time being overweight. And I think a lot of people do this. We create an identity around our body image, which becomes our self-image. And when our bodies change, so a lot of pregnant women go through this as well, or people that have been overweight their entire life, we create a body image around our bodies and thinking that is my identity, even though your body can change and alter and be altered and all the things. I freaked out. It was really hard mentally and emotionally to be overweight for the first time in my life. But it was very humbling, to be honest with you. And I'm glad I went through that because I learned so many valuable lessons after having gone through that experience of realizing that all of us are more than our bodies. Like, our bodies are a part of us, but don't go create an identity around your body thinking you're always going to look that way. And this is what happens when people age and get wrinkles and gray hair and saggier skin. Like, as we grow older, you're setting yourself up for heartbreak and pain in the future if you create an identity around your body image, expecting your body to always stay the same.
I love that. So mic drop, if you can do that, like, I don't know. But that's, so that is so great. And I resonate with this, and I talk to people about this. And to be honest with you, so I'm 38. Yeah, 38. I probably didn't understand this until the last year of my life, right? I'm with you. So I had this identity around this body image that I have, right? I'm a healthy person. That's what I do for a living. I coach people on how to be healthy. And so, in 2020, when everyone had a bad time, I got into a really bad slump and I gained quite a bit of weight, and I had this terrible self-image of myself, and I lost a lot of confidence and I got really depressed. Now, thankfully, I know people in the industry, right? So I got a coach. She was amazing. Fixed it real quick. Felt a lot better. But I understand what you're saying. You identify with this body image instead of realizing that you're worthy based on what is actually inside of you. And what really helped me with this is I just read Jamie Lee Kearns, I don't know, her book Worthy. I don't know if you've heard of that. It came out in February, but she talks about just your self-worth. And I was already on the right page because I have a great therapist, but that book really put it all together, that you are way more than your actual body image. And so I think that's very powerful. And I think a lot of people who come to me, or to get to that point, who come to you, are at that point, right? Where they just are so mentally, they've beat themselves up and they're in such a bad place that they almost get in their own way of getting better, right?
Amen. And I think so many women struggle with this more than men do, because there's a lot more pressure on women in our society to look a certain way, be a certain way, wear this much makeup, but not too much makeup, and be this skinny, but not too skinny or too fit or too overweight. There's so much pressure for women, I would say. Men kind of have it easier, but still it's the same concept of our society places so much value on our physical appearance that it kind of, at a young age, people, are teased for the way they look and their physical appearance. So it's hard not to buy into that, but that's awesome that you've discovered that and you tell your clients about that, because there's a mental and emotional aspect to this whole journey that I think is super important. Because if you think just getting the fit body is going to solve all your problems, you'll realize that that's just another attempt, like becoming rich. If I just have this much money, all my problems will go away. I think we're all trying to fill a void that exists, and where that void comes from, that's kind of your personal journey to discover hey, it's not about getting fit that's going to fill that void. It might temporarily feel good, but in the long run, learning to fill that void with worthiness and self-love. That's why I'm such a proponent of empathy and self-love in the realm of health and fitness. I think it can exist there, and it should, to help people become more fulfilled on their journey and realize that it's not about the destination or the results. It's about learning to fall in love with the process, because you realize you're worthy to do the process, to show up and live the process, whether the results are there or not. It's not about that. So anyways, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Yeah. And what I heard from you too is I like the word purpose. So that's why I like to ask people what is your purpose in life? And I think it took until I was 35 or 6 for me to really determine what my purpose was. And it sounds like you figured out at 31 or 32, but once you kind of figure out that purpose in life, because I think most people, not everyone, I don't want hate about this, but most people in their 20s, we're just kind of a mess, right? We're living life, we're doing whatever, but when you really start to think about what is my purpose in life, and you figure that out and you really get fired up about that, that's when things in life start to change, right? And so I have figured out my purpose over the last couple years. And once you have that purpose in mind, then I think you do better on this journey, right, of trying to become healthier. But with me, what changed like my mindset was I used to be that girl who wanted to be 110 pounds and look like all the models. And like, that's what you're supposed to do because you're selling fitness. And then this aha moment went off in my life where it's like, no, what I really want is to be healthy, right? I don't want to starve myself. I want to eat well. I want to do all the things I tell people to do. I want to sleep well. And so I just kind of got on this journey of like, how do I make myself feel the best and give my body all the nutrition it needs? And, and so now that's kind of the journey I'm on. When I'm hungry, I eat good, whole, nutritious foods. I make sure I work out. I do things like that, but I'm really striving to make sure that I have the most energy to fulfill the purpose that I have in life. Right. Cause like you're busy, I'm sure. And so it takes a lot of energy to take care of all these people. And so I love that. So you figured out your purpose, right? Which is to empathize with these people who want to lose weight, want to change, and need your help. So I think that's awesome. So you're a month in, you're 20 pounds up, you're mentally not good. You're explaining to strangers why you don't look like you think you should look, but they're like, hey, you look okay. All right. So keep going. So what happens the second month?
Yeah, I would say the second month and third month are where, things got really, really difficult for me because I realized I was in this for 6 months. I was already struggling physically, mentally by this point, and I'm like, I have 5 more months of this. How am I going to finish this, right? And what's interesting is this is about the time where the exposure kind of took off, because you have to understand, when I did Fit to Fat to Fit, I didn't expect any kind of national news coverage or media attention. I didn't know what I was doing, to be totally honest with you. I just learned how to start a website through Squarespace, and I created a YouTube channel and a Facebook page. And I was like, okay, this should be good. I'll just show my friends and family what I'm doing. This is where like bloggers and people, like podcasts had just started back then in 2011. It makes me feel so old. But like people were like starting to interview me and have me on. And then before you know it, Jay Leno happened, then Dr. Oz, and Good Morning America. And then I did this whole press tour. And, as far as like the eating goes, that part, it's interesting. And I've learned so much about the emotional connection to food during this whole journey, this whole process of this vicious cycle that it creates, where I didn't have an outlet like exercise to reduce the stress. So food became my outlet. But food is a terrible outlet because you feel great when you're eating the food, but 15, 20, 30 minutes later, 60 minutes later, you get this huge spike in blood sugar with a huge crash, and then you're feeling miserable. So you need more of that food to make you feel better temporarily, only to make you feel worse in the long run. And like I said, it creates this vicious cycle where people get stuck in that. But I understood better the vicious cycle that people get stuck in with food addiction and emotional eating with this processed junk food. Because also, like I mentioned before, this food is cheaper / more affordable, if you will, because it's subsidized by the government. All the corn, wheat, and soy products that exist out there that are marketed to us as, fat-free or all natural or fortified with vitamin A and vitamin C or whole grains, all these clever marketing techniques, people gravitate towards that food. I would say 80% of our population eats that food, and it's no wonder, because it's such an uphill battle for people to eat healthy, whole foods, because it is more expensive. And because, if you want grass-fed organic, you're going to have to pay almost double versus, if you pay for some like Cinnamon Toast Crunch or the knockoff brand, that stuff's super cheap. Soda is cheaper than water. How is that possible? But these realizations started to come up for me, and it just became more and more humbling by month 2, 3, 4. And then, like I said, the TV show started to happen, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is for real now. I got to actually finish this thing, and it was a wild ride. Yeah, it was very humbling, the whole process.
So, so let's talk about that for a second. So these cheap, really good, tasty, pleasurable food that are all garbage, by the way, just complete junk. And that infuriates me too, that, a lot of food companies do research, I'm sure on how to make these foods more addictive so that we want to eat them, knowing good and well that they are all terrible for us. And so do you feel like when you were eating like that, you craved more of, so prior to this, I'm assuming you didn't eat Cinnamon Toast Crunch okay. But then once you started eating this, did you find yourself actually craving that, like wanting it and wanting more? And did you find yourself over time needing to eat more and more to get that same pleasure that you weren't able to get from exercise, that you would get from your dopamine rushes from this garbage food?
Yeah, 100%. The food, like I said, became my outlet, if you will. And it does, like the amount of dopamine probably that's released compared to eating broccoli and salmon, for example, is probably like night and day, just because your brain lights up so much when you're eating the Cinnamon Toast Crunch and all the delicious, foods that I'll admit are freaking delicious. They did make my taste buds and my brain light up. It made me temporarily feel better. And so, sorry, someone's calling me. So anyways, it really opened up my eyes to just why people get stuck. And the thing that really was the biggest part of it was when I went back to eating healthy. And this is where my eyes were open truly to how powerful the biological connection to this food is. Because when I went 6 months of eating this food every single day, 5,000 calories of eating this food, to going back to eating whole food, I was like, oh, I'm going to feel great right away. I'm going to feel good. And it was the opposite. My body almost fought back against me and went through these extreme withdrawal symptoms of like wanting this high that it had had for the past 6 months and not being able to have that anymore. It was weird for me as a personal trainer, as a proponent of health, to feel my body fighting against me to like, hey, no, we want these drugs, these highs that we've had, and we feel miserable. So I had headaches. I was grumpy. I was moody. The food wasn't as satiating. It didn't taste as good as I had remembered it. So I think your taste buds change and alter to the types of foods that you're eating. And that was a really big wake up call, because I used to be so judgmental towards my clients. Like, what's wrong with you guys? Why can't you just stick to a meal plan? It's not that hard. You just don't eat the junk food. You just have some willpower, some discipline, until I went through it myself. And that's where the empathy started to develop of like, oh my gosh, this is what my clients have or go through when I give them a meal plan. I expect them to be perfect, but they've been eating this way for not just for 6 months, but for years and decades maybe. And now they're just now trying to fix their life, and improve their situation. It's weird how your body will fight back against you if you give it a certain drug that gets a certain chemical release in the brain every time you consume it. Food is the most accessible drug we have here in our country. And the problem with it, I would say it's harder than even certain drugs. I'm not trying to compare. What I'm trying to say is that food is legal. We need it to survive. We need it to live. Unlike drugs, right? You don't need that to survive. But what I'm saying is the food addiction is just kind of swept under the rug. It's not that big of a deal. But let's be honest, like that stuff is just as addictive as other things are. And we all use certain substances to escape the emotional pains of life. And this is why I have so much empathy for people that struggle with addiction, because whether it's food, drugs, alcohol, sex, porn, social media, whatever it is, we all like to escape as humans the emotional pains of life. And so some people gravitate towards food, some people alcohol, some people other drugs, because let's be honest, this life for a lot of us humans, we're emotional creatures, is really difficult. And instead of sitting with the uncomfortableness of the pain of maybe some like trauma we're experiencing or hardships that we're going through, it's easier to just numb and escape that pain through a pleasurable substance, whether it's food or drugs or alcohol or whatever it is for you. And I get why people do that, because we're not robots. So if I give someone a meal plan, it's like, here's your macros, here's your calories, that's cool if they can follow it. But it takes out the human element of this person maybe suffered from severe abuse as a kid and has some traumatic experiences that maybe led them down a path of self-sabotage or emotionally eating or, drinking away their problems. We're all emotional creatures trying to figure out how to deal with these uncomfortable emotions. And this is, me doing the inner work on myself. I've come to this realization that, humans, we're complicated creatures. We're not these robots that just fit into these perfect little boxes anymore. We have these complicated emotions that we have to deal with. So anyways, that's kind of like a small part of the lessons that I've learned from this experience, having gone through it, not just once in 2011, but I did it again as a 40-year-old in 2020. And these are the lessons that I learned.
Okay, so we're going to come back to that the second time, but I like that. So what I heard you say is, dopamine is, and I talk to my patients about this too, like dopamine is that thing that gives us a high, right? That's what we're all seeking all the time. And we all get it in different ways, right? So some people get it from food. A lot of people get it from alcohol. you can, but the cool thing about dopamine is you can get it from walking or exercise or weightlifting too, right? So you get to pick your poison. You get it from sex, as you pointed out, but you get to pick your poison. And so I talk to patients about this a lot. And I love that you do this too. When my patients come in, the first question I ask them every time I see them is, how are you feeling? And I think they get annoyed because they're like, but it's because I really want to know, like, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And if the first answer is, I'm not well, then I'm like, okay, how is your sleep? How is your mood? How is your, like, I start asking these things. And I think sometimes they look at me like, why do you care? But it's because all those things I think help with dopamine, right? So if you're not sleeping well, then that's going to affect your mood, affects dopamine, affects serotonin. How are you eating? Are you exercising? Like, these things are all important. And then the other thing I like to ask people is, like, what are you doing? How's your job going? I know a lot about my patients' lives, their family, their kids, because if you don't really have a purpose, you're not working towards something. A lot of my patients love being grandparents, or a lot of them love their actual job, or, if you don't have all these things in place, then you are more likely to do something bad, whether that be smoke or drink or have sex with people you shouldn't, or, eat too, whatever. And so I do love that you realize that, because from a physiological standpoint, a medicine standpoint, we know about dopamine, and that makes sense. And most people just, I don't think, put two and two together, right? Like, they know. For instance, I have women who tell me all the time, like, well, I can't lose weight. Okay, well, let's talk about your diet. Well, my diet's great. Okay, well, what do you do when you get home from work? Well, I pour a glass of wine, and then I have another one. And then, and it's like, okay, well, that's our problem with our with our waist. So why are we drinking wine? Well, because I had a stressful day and I deserve it. Okay, well, why aren't we going for a walk or lift, And so the fact that you put that together, and to be honest with you, in full disclosure, that's what happened to me too, right? In 2020, I drank more than I should have, like everyone else. And I think that's why I got in the place that I did. And, whenever you open a bottle of wine with your husband and drink it at night, and then you wake up the next morning, you're just like, that's probably too much. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of where I got to, but I was drinking for the wrong reasons. And then that's whenever I was like, okay, I'm going to get a trainer. I'm going to start exercising. And so now when I'm really stressed, like when I come home, like it's 6 o'clock here. I just got home. I've had a very stressful last couple of days. We've had some stuff going on in the office. And so when we get off this podcast, I'm going to take my dog for a walk, and then I'm going to go to the gym, because if I don't, I'm going to go stand in my pantry and eat some peanut butter and chocolate, talk to my husband and gripe about the day. And that's not going to do anyone good. So that's that's just what I've learned, right? I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'm going to sit down in him and eat some good, whole, nutritious food, like some sweet potatoes. And so I love that you have figured that out, and that you have that empathy with your clients, and with, I do with patients, and you can kind of talk about that. And we're all human, right? And so that's why I like to talk to you about this. Like I did a podcast with somebody else where, big bodybuilder, creature. I don't know if you know Logan, but Goody Beats. He,
Yeah.
So I love Logan. He's one of my good friends, and he, said the same thing. Like, we all have these demons in our closet where we want to eat bad things or revert to bad habits, but you just have to find other ways to deal with that, right? Like, you're going to have bad days, but so I like that you said that. So you finished this 6-month weight gain, and you gained 75 pounds. And so this was in 2011 still? When did you do this first ride? 2011. So you got up 75 pounds. You didn't exercise at all.
Zero exercise.
Gosh, your mental health was like at an all-time low when you were done? Or were you seeing a therapist? Were you just like figuring it out? You had a newborn baby now because your wife was pregnant. Like, how was your mental state? How was your sleep?
That's a really good question. Back then, I was a different version of myself. My sleep was not great. I wish I would have, there was no, I didn't have a Whoop, or, 2011, there was no tracking sleep back then, at least that I can remember. But my sleep was definitely not great, and I didn't drink alcohol back then. But the other part of this journey was, I got really good at wearing a mask. So I was, I think a lot of us are programmed to suppress our feelings and emotions. And, I'm sure I was probably worse off inside than I was making it seem on the outside. But yeah, I wasn't ever depressed, I would say, but I was definitely having this identity crisis that would come back up and leave me feeling sad, because I cared a lot what other people thought about me. And so during this first journey, I didn't take off my shirt in public at all. I was very self-conscious about being overweight. I kind of didn't want to go out in public and be seen as I was doing this. So it was a very different version of when I did it again in 2020, having gone through divorce, hitting rock bottom, leaving my religion, going to therapy, meditating, discovering who I was without all the masks. And then when I did it again in 2020, it was a completely different experience, but had its own challenges that we can talk about briefly. But it was an eye-opening experience. Like I said, very humbling, totally changed my perspective of what I thought it entailed. And it took me from being this very judgmental, narrow-minded person to starting to develop some empathy and understanding things from a different perspective. And I think that's valuable as a human, to be able to empathize with people. There's a good quote that I love by Teddy Roosevelt, who says, "No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care." And that's really what changed for me. Was like, before, it was all about the accolades and having this certification and that certification. If I just have more knowledge, I'll be able to help more people. But at the end of the day, no one really cares how much knowledge you have if they don't really know that you care about them. And people they want to feel seen. They want to feel safe. They want to feel understood. And when you come from a place of judgment or better than, people, their defenses come up and they don't feel safe to be seen without their mask on. And I'm talking metaphorically, obviously, but what I'm saying is the ability to make someone feel safe by empathizing with them. I didn't have those skills until I did this first experiment. And that's where it kind of first started, was like, oh, okay, I had it wrong this whole time. So that changed my trajectory in life.
So you did this for 6 months, you gained 75 pounds, you get this, you're on this show showing yourself off, but you don't really want anyone to see yourself. And then how did your weight loss journey go? Like so you already said it was harder than you thought it was going to be. How long did it take you to lose the 75 pounds?
6 months. 6 months of gaining, 6 months of losing.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is good. But I want people to understand, like, it wasn't easy. Yeah, there's some factors that I want to, just talk about. And that is muscle memory, my metabolism compared to someone who's been overweight for years or decades. It's not the same thing. Like, I don't want to pretend like, oh, I did it, so you can do it. It's not the same. I was only overweight for 6 months, right? I didn't grow up overweight. I wasn't bullied as a kid because of my weight. None of that happened. So it was just like a controlled environment where I gained the weight. I was humbled and I gained a better understanding. But the journey back to fit was very humbling. To be this person that I would say like is on the top of like this mountain of like health and fitness, to come down to the bottom, to start all over again, like, with losing my strength, losing my endurance, having to build that back up from scratch, from ground zero, was really, really humbling as well. And it taught me a lot about, oh, shoot, I used to think, why can't these people do these workouts? It's so easy for me. Until, here I am, 60, 70 pounds overweight, trying to work out again. It was very humbling. And there was weeks where I hit plateaus. There was weeks where I didn't lose any weight. And it definitely opened up my eyes, and it humbled me for sure. But I did get back to fit, just with a new perspective.
So did you follow like a really strict meal plan? Did you go back? Well, let's start with this. Prior to doing this, do you feel like you were on a really strict meal plan, or are you somebody who does like really strict like macros? Do you kind of do intuitive eating? Like, what were you prior? And then how did you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Back then in 2011 or before that, most of my life I was pretty healthy and strict with my diet, just because that's kind of like that was my identity, right? Then, losing the weight, I had to go back to being strict. I knew that journey very well. I grew up wrestling, understood how food worked and, macros. And I did more of a paleo-ish diet, I would say. Mostly whole foods, 5 to 6 small meals per day, every 2 to 3 hours, kind of your typical, bodybuilder, gym bro diet, which worked. It helped me lose 75 pounds in 6 months, and I got back to fit. The second time I did it, I did more of a keto intermittent fasting approach. As a 40-year-old, I definitely changed the way I ate. And where I'm at now, honestly, like, I'm not super strict. I eat a lot of protein. I don't track anything, but I'm in a place now where, I have 2 daughters. They're teenagers now. And I choose not to make my diet my religion. Just because after leaving a religion and deconstructing that, and seeing the damage that using shame and guilt can cause, I've kind of landed in a place where I'm happy with the way I eat, meaning I would say 80 to 90%, mostly whole foods, right? Every once in a while, we'll have pizza night with my girls, or, I'll have some of their dessert, or, I'll eat with them instead of like, oh, I got to eat my boring salad while you guys eat your mac and cheese. Like sometimes I will eat with them, but for the most part, 80% of the time I'm pretty, I do mostly whole foods. It's pretty boring, I would say, what I eat now. But I'm not like this strict person where like I need my body to look a certain way, or else I'm less than, or I'm not worthy. I've just landed in a different place over the years where I'm not defined by what body fat I am. And if I eat this processed food, I don't shame myself, or I understand that there's consequences to it, but I don't see food as evil or bad anymore. It's like, okay, I'll have some of these chips, but I'm not. It's about the intention, like we talked about. Like, if am I eating this food to escape the pains of life? Am I shoving this food down my face at midnight because I'm sad and I'm lonely and I'm depressed? That's different than having cake and ice cream with my girls as like a celebration or whatever. It's totally different. So it comes down to intention. Same thing with alcohol. I don't drink a lot of alcohol, but if I do drink, it's probably not alone by myself in the middle of the night because I'm sad. It's out with friends, and it's a celebratory thing, and it's like a special occasion. It's all about intention. And that's why I try and teach a lot of my clients is, set an intention. And if you're intentional about what you eat and why you're eating it, just be honest with yourself. Like, are you eating to escape the pain? That's okay. It's not good or bad. You don't need to label it. Just be aware of it. There's a good quote I love by Anthony DeMello who says, what you're aware of, you're in control of. And what you're not aware of is in control of you. So as you build more self-awareness and become aware of why you do what you do and why you put that food in your mouth, then you can be more in control of like, okay, I'm self-sabotaging right now. I got into a fight with my spouse and my kids are driving me crazy, and like, I just don't feel worthy right now, and I'm going to eat this food because I feel less than, and this will make me temporarily feel better. As you become more self-aware as a human, you can start to control your responses. Like Viktor Frankl talks about in the book A Man's Search for Meaning, there's between stimulus and response, there's space. And in that space is your power to choose. That's not the exact quote, but something along those lines. So what I help my clients do is create space between the trigger or the stimulus and how you react. And if you could thoughtfully respond in those moments of reactivity where normally you're just like, screw it, give me the alcohol, give me the food, whatever. If you can learn to push pause, go for a walk, do some breath work techniques that work to slow things down and create more space, then you can thoughtfully respond to how you would want to, your higher self of like, okay, I don't want to keep self-sabotaging and, I'm doing this pattern that I'm stuck in. And that's kind of what I help people with this conscious fitness approach is building self-awareness, having self-compassion and empathy for yourself so you can better navigate those triggers in life and become aware of why you're doing what you're doing. Does that make sense?
I love that. It makes so much sense. I feel like I'm getting another therapy session and you're going to have to send me a bill. No, I like that. It's all about intention. I think that's awesome. Some of the questions I have for you that I know listeners are going to have. So you said so right now you do not macro count. Like you're not a macro counter. You're not a calorie counter. You intentionally, I love that because I kind of do that too. I started very intentionally counting macros. And then it's hard to do, right? Like I make sure I get so much protein in a day, but it's really hard to make sure you get like a certain amount of carbs and so I kind of intentionally eat as well. And I don't deprive myself anymore. Like I just don't. If I want a whole sweet potato, I eat a whole sweet potato. If I want, a cookie or a piece of chocolate, I'll eat it. But it takes a process. Like it takes a little while to get there. When you have a goal, you can't always do that. But you said the first time that you lost the weight, you just kind of went back to eating how you were and doing your macros. But the second time when you were in your 40s, you said you did keto and intermittent fasting. So talk to me about why you did that. Cause that's kind of the craze right now. And I don't like to put myself in like a box. People are like, oh, do you eat keto? I don't think that there's like necessarily a box that everyone fits in. I think if you are 70 pounds overweight, that keto could be beneficial. I don't think that it's sustainable. I know I'm going to get some hate over that, but I think your body needs some nutrients. So tell me why at 40 you picked more of like the keto intermittent fasting, and Like, what were
Yeah.
your net carbs? How long did you intermittent fast? Did you lose the weight faster? Did you feel any different, etc.?
Yeah, good question. For me, I'd been doing keto on and off since 2016-ish. I kind of stumbled upon it. I wrote my own book called Complete Keto. So I was big into the keto intermittent fasting world. And I started to, veer more towards that because it was more sustainable for me as a, busy single parent entrepreneur where I didn't have time to make 5, 6 small meals per day. Eating once or twice per day was more efficient for me. And I didn't feel hungry all the time. My brain was super sharp. I had that mental clarity when you're in a state of ketosis. That's what I do love about it. But I will say that, I'm not super strict with keto anymore. I think, it's a great tool for people to learn and to have in their tool belt of like, hey, this is an option. If you've never done this before, definitely give it a try. Here's the healthier way to do it. And here's probably the less healthier way that a lot of people tend to gravitate towards, which is a lot of the processed keto comfort foods that exist, where people just eat that all day. And people, we do that with every diet, vegan, paleo, there's all these like comfort foods that exist. So for me, yeah, I felt great doing it. I gained 62 pounds in 4 months on the second journey. And then I lost 62 pounds in 4 months doing keto intermittent fasting, which for me was just easier to, eat once or twice a day, lose that weight. But for now, like right now I eat pretty intuitively, meaning like I'll have like a protein coffee for breakfast. I'll have one big lunch and a big dinner, and then in between snacks that are usually high protein. I'm like you, where I eat a lot of protein. I would say I still eat lower-ish carbs. I don't really track it, but if I had to guess, I'd probably around 100 grams of carbs. But I work out a lot and I'm active a lot. And so for me, I don't mind having, carbohydrates as a fuel source. So yeah, and I do miss, I would say, the mental clarity from being in strict ketosis, but I would say for performance with the way I live my life now, I'm okay having carbohydrates in my diet. Like, I'm not, like you said, that I don't label myself for like, this is the right way to do it. If you eat carbs, this is why they're bad. I think for some people, they do really well on a low carb diet, and other people, they got to find what works best for them. And I try and give people, empower them to become their own self-experimentation. Like do some experiments, figure out what works best for you, whether it's keto or more of a plant-based approach or whatever, whatever helps that person on their journey for that period of time. I think I kind of empower them with that. But yeah, that's kind of where I've landed. And, I think it's a great tool.
Okay, so your book that you wrote, Complete Keto in 2016, will that tell us how to do a keto diet without all the crap? Is that more of
Yes.
like a whole, okay. Because
That's a whole keto.
I've tried to do keto before, I'll admit, and it was probably mostly crap. And maybe I never did it right. I never got to that like great clarity I'll talk about that. I was just hungry and angry, and it just didn't go well with me. So maybe I was doing it wrong. So maybe I'll look at your book. And then the other thing I was going to point out to you is with keto. I mean, my problem with keto with women, especially, I don't know how many of your clients are women versus men, but when women are cycling, you have to be careful with fasting and doing keto during certain times of your cycle. And I can get all the hate anyone wants to give me about this, but I understand hormone metabolism and physiology. I can talk to you about it all day. And so when you're cycling as a woman, there are certain times in your cycle that you do need carbohydrates. You just do. And so that can, I mean, if you're going to be a professional bodybuilder and you're taking, some other things, that may be different. But if you're just naturally cycling as a woman, when your progesterone goes up, it's going to be really hard to eat keto. It's going to affect your mood. And it can affect your menstrual cycle. So now if you're morbidly obese, no, because your body has reserves, right? But if you're not morbidly obese, it becomes more difficult. So that's one of the things I like to point out to women who struggle. I did this a lot, and maybe that's why I never felt well when I did keto or whenever I did keto diets. I didn't, but it does matter on the timing of your cycle. And then the last thing I want to know is, how long do you intermittent fast for? How long did you intermittent fast for when you were doing this weight loss thing?
Yeah, typically a 16-8 protocol, which worked really well for me. And like I said, my default is, like I said, I really don't eat 3 or 4 big meals per day. I'll have 2 main meals, and then my coffee in the morning is like coffee with whey protein, collagen protein, maybe a little bit of MCT oil powder in there. And that's kind of like how I start my day off with like 40 grams of protein. And then, so it's not intermittent fasting, but when I was losing the weight, I had to be more strict. So a 16-8 protocol where I just have black coffee and then lunch and then dinner, no snacks. I had to be really strict with my diet to lose those 60 pounds that I'd gained. But like where I'm at today, yeah, I don't follow really any strict intermittent fasting. I think fasting is great. Every once in a while, maybe once a year, I'll do like a 3 or 4 day fast. I've done a 7-day fast before, but at the same time, I really like, some of the newer research, like Dr. Peter Attia talks about, like fasting too much. Yeah, as you get older, you want to maintain your muscle mass. Like and you're going to lose it regardless. So the slower the rate you could lose your muscle, the better. Like if you could hold on or build muscle, in your 40s and 50s and 60s, you're going to want to hold on to that, as you age. And so for me, I don't fast as much as I used to, or like shame myself of like, oh, I need to fast so I can get fitter or like have a little bit less fat on my body. I don't really fast for weight loss, and I try and teach people not to fast for weight loss. Yes, it's an effective tool to lose weight, but it's not the best long-term strategy because you can't fast more and fast longer. Like at some point there's a cutoff, right? So anyways.
Yeah, it's a life. That's why I started this podcast, Back to the Basics. It's a lifestyle, like choice modification. I'm just trying to help people get some like simple tips to just change their life to make them healthier, because there's so much misleading information out there. And I completely agree with the fasting. So like I can fast. I can do a 16-8. I can do that for 3 months. I can lose a lot of muscle. I can lose weight, but I lose muscle. And so that was my problem, right? Is like I track my muscle on InBodies monthly. And my goal this year was to put on 10 pounds of muscle. Like I'm trying really hard. If I fast, I lose weight. Trust me, I'll get a 6-pack really fast. It's nice, but I lose muscle. Like you can see it. And so that is my thing. And that's what I tell people is like, especially as you get older, you lose so much muscle mass as you lose hormones, and muscle is like the key to life. I mean, it's the key to so many things. Right. And so that's where I have the problem with these people who fast. I know Dr. Mark Hyman talks a lot about fasting, and I mean, he is an older guy, looks great, but doesn't have a ton of muscle. And so that's my thing too, is like, if you want to have muscle, it's hard to do that with fasting. And so when you're talking about eating in an 8-hour window, I can't eat the amount of protein that I need to eat in an 8-hour window, or I feel awful. Yeah, it's hard. And I'm sure I eat way less than you do, but I try to eat like 130 grams of protein a day, not negotiable, at least 120. And it's hard to do that in 8 hours. And so that's my thing with fasting. I know it got this craze, and I do think it's great if you're trying to lose 60 pounds, God willing, if I ever get pregnant one day and have a baby, that's probably how I'm going to lose my baby weight, is I'm going to do a little bit of fasting, maybe, but then that's not good for breast milk. And so that's a whole situation too. But yeah, I don't know that fasting is the answer. It's more of like a make good, nutritious, like what I'm hearing you say is eat whole foods, move your body, make sure your mind is right, make sure you're sleeping well. It's getting all that in tune with your body. Right. And then I love, I've never thought about this, the intentional eating part, like that. You nailed that. It's so true. I was just sitting here thinking, like, whenever I eat, I never think about what is the intention of this food. It's usually like I'm shoveling something in my mouth in between doing one thing to the next thing to the, never really do that. So I think that's really cool, and that's really powerful. And so I guess that's kind of what you have made this your brand around. And I think that's a really good thing. A lot of people stop and I guess pray before they eat. Maybe we should stop. What I'm going to do is stop and say, what is my intention with this food? Is it to fuel my body? Is it to make me feel better? Is it, just because I haven't eaten anything all day? Like, what truly is my intention? And then I loved your quote about like, if however you said it, if you know what your intention is, you can control that. And if you don't, it's going to control you. I think that's powerful. You should write a book about that. But anyway,
so thank you.
Really? That's awesome. I will. I can't wait to read it. I'd love it. So yeah, that's super powerful. That's all. I love that. So you lost it a second time. And then after you lost it the second time, and I'm assuming when you're losing it, both these times you're exercising again, right? Because you look like you exercise. So
5 days a week. That's my rule. A lot of people are like, oh, you probably work out twice a day. It's like, no, 5 days a week. I have a busy schedule. I have kids. I'm a single parent. It's not easy being a single parent and an entrepreneur. So I have 5 days a week, probably 45 minutes per day, maybe an hour on the longer days. But yeah, it's not like some crazy schedule that I have to lose the weight. But yeah, I'm working out, lifting 3 days a week, hit cardio one day, zone 2 cardio the other day. That's kind of like my basic formula. And then Saturday, Sunday, active recovery days, walking, hiking, stretching, yoga, playing with my kids, stuff like that.
Okay. So there you go. So no more than an hour, lifting 3 days a week, and then like a hit cardio, and then zone 2 cardio. So nothing crazy.
Yeah, nothing crazy. Pretty basic. It's like a lifestyle, like you said.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle. And that's what I think a lot of people in this country get really frustrated about. They come to you, they come to me. I want to lose 60 pounds in 6 weeks because I have to go to my granddaughter's wedding and I have to, fit in this dress or just something absurd like that. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. And then I had a girl yesterday that was like, I just want a medicine. I'm sick of this. I want a medicine. I'm always hungry. And I was like, sweetie, if there was a medicine, nobody would be overweight. Like if there was truly a medicine that made you skinny, do you think anyone in this country would be fat? Like it's not that easy, and the people who are telling you it is are lying. And so it's just, getting that information out to people. And then, but I like your, working on your mindset. I'm big in mindset too, just got there in the last few years, like I said, but I think your mind helps a lot with that. So, and also making sure that your body image is, your identity is not tied just to your body image, but that what your purpose is. And you have this self-image and that, I think all that brings it together. So you need to write a book about all of that. And then I'll read it before you publish it if you want and give you some feedback and it'll be fabulous.
Sounds good, Dr. Cassie. I appreciate that. Yeah. Last thing I'll say really quick is, no one really talks about doing the inner work in the fitness industry. It's all about working out, macros, calories, supplements. Like there needs to be space for doing the inner work because like I said, we're emotional creatures as humans. And that's why, like what you say, like, how are you feeling today? How is your sleep? How is your sex life? How is your digestion? How are your relationships? Those things matter because your ability to do the physical stuff is determined by your mental and emotional states. And if you're in a chaotic, overwhelmed, stressed out state all the time with high cortisol all day long, and you're trying to also count macros and get in your workouts, this is why so many people are so overwhelmed. They're like, I want to lose 60 pounds, but I have 4 kids. I sleep 5 hours a night. My financial situation is not the best. All the
I eat 1 meal a day.
Yeah.
I once a day. I don't have time for that. It's through a drive-through, but it's only 1,100 calories because I went through a drive-through. I'm just telling you some of the things I hear.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what it is. And that's why doing the inner work is so important.
I agree. I love that. So I have 3 questions I want to ask you. I ask all my guests at the end 3 questions, and then I'm going to have you tell everyone how they can find out more about you. But what food do you recommend? So if there was one food you could tell people like, hey, I really recommend this food for all the health purposes, or that you eat, what would it be?
As long as you don't have allergies to it, eggs. I think eggs are pretty much like the complete protein, egg whites, egg yolks. Don't be afraid of eating the yolk. As long as you don't have allergies to it. Some people do have legit allergies to it, but I would say eggs are probably up there. And I would say beyond that, I know people aren't going to like this, but I love organ meats. I could eat liver all day, to be totally honest with you. Super nutrient dense.
You just eat it raw? How do you eat it?
No, I cook it in butter and salt. It's delicious.
Okay. So I've asked 4 people that question and 2 people have said eggs. So that should tell you something, listeners. Pay attention. Eggs. I personally eat egg whites almost every day. I love egg whites. Not a big fan of whole eggs, but okay. What would you have liked to know about your health 10 years ago? Like, what do you wish you would have known about your health 10 years ago?
These are hard. These are good questions. Like, I love these types of questions. About my physical health or like health in general?
Just health in general.
The connection between my mental health and my physical health and how those two aren't separate things, but they're intertwined, and there's so many parallels between the physical, the mental, even I would say spiritual health. They're all connected to each other. And I wish I would have known that instead of physical health over here, mental health over there, not really understanding how they, affect each other. I wish I would have understood that on a deeper level 10 years ago, but eventually I did understand it.
Okay. That's awesome. And then what is one, give somebody one exercise or one thing that they could do just to help their overall health? Like if you could come up with one thing, what would it be?
I'm a huge proponent recently of something called rucking, Rucking. It's basically walking with a weighted backpack on. And the military does this a lot, but I learned it from a book called The Comfort Crisis, because it's one form of cardio that increases your cardiovascular endurance, but can also help build muscle at the same time if you have, enough weight on. But like women, I generally start out at 20 pounds, work their way up to maybe 30 pounds. And men, I start at 30 pounds. And I ruck with like a 50, sometimes 60 pound sack on my back. And I love it because it gets people outdoors, gets them moving. Like, sure, you can do, HIIT cardio and sprints and running, but walking is first of all, you burn 4 times more calories than just walking alone, and it's safer on your joints than running is. So if you want to do this long term, rucking is like a great middle of the road way of full body exercise that helps to increase your cardiovascular endurance, and you can build muscle doing it at the same time. And it's safer. Do you get
a backpack, or is this something you buy on Amazon? You just type in rucking on Amazon? What is this?
There's a company that I love called GoRuck.com, and they build official rucksacks that are, designed. It's a military-owned company or a veteran-owned company. Love those guys. If you want a professional one, if you just want a cheap, easy one, just grab a backpack, get a weight, a dumbbell, kettlebell, wrap it in a towel so it's not super uncomfortable on your back. Try and get one with a chest strap, and if they have ones that can strap around your waist, that would be ideal. But for the first year or two, I just used a cheap backpack with a few dumbbells in it, wrapped it in a towel, and it works. But then you get an official rucksack. It's more expensive, and you have a plate, and you have like the padding on the back, and it's more comfortable while you're rucking. But yeah, it's becoming more mainstream these days, and I think it's a great way to get out in nature. One, because we need to get out more in nature. It's safer on the joints than running is, and it burns more calories than walking.
And it doesn't hurt your back? Because to me, I'm thinking if I have this thing on my back and I'm walking, no, it's not. It
actually pulls your shoulders back. A lot of us are hunched forward because of computer screens and stuff like that. This with the weighted backpack pulls your shoulders back into alignment, keeps your spine erect, and with the straps, it helps out so much. So yeah, you would think it would hurt your back. It actually helps to strengthen your back because you're kind of leaning forward so your core is engaged the whole time, right? So yeah, I would give it a try. And all my followers that do it end up loving it. And it's a great form of full body exercise.
Okay, so GoRuck.com. I'm going to order that when we're done, and I'm going to start rucking because I love that. I'll start with 20 pounds and I'll work my way up. So you're just doing this for 20, 30 minutes every morning like you would when you were walking? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I try and get people to go for 30 to 60 minutes if they can, just depending on the day. But yeah, like I said, getting out in nature is very underrated, and I think that's one of the biggest benefits of it is it gets you outside. So, most of it's exercise in gyms, which is great too. Don't get me wrong, I love lifting weights. I do that, 3-4 days a week. But my favorite form of cardio is just to go ruck every day, either first thing in the morning because it gets hot here, or once the sun goes down. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, you do live in Hawaii, so it's a little prettier than Oklahoma. I would love to ruck in Hawaii, but I'm going to try it in Oklahoma, and I will let you know how it goes. One last question though, is there any foreseeable weight gaining in your future now, Drew, or are we done with this plan, or are we going to do it at 50, Drew 5.0, or?
Well, here's the thing. I swore I would never do it after the first one, to be totally honest with you, and I ended up doing it. So I'm not going to jinx myself again and say I'm never going to do it, but for the foreseeable future, I don't ever see it happening again, just so people know, when I turn 50, it's probably not going to happen, just so you guys know.
Okay. Well, maybe we will cheer you on and we'll see how that goes. Okay. So Drew Manning, thank you so much for coming on the Back to the Basics podcast. Will you tell everyone, in the show notes, I'm going to link all your social media. I'm going to link your website. Is there anything you want to tell people about where they can find you or how they can work with you with this amazing, intentional weight loss journey?
Yeah, super simple. All my social media handles are at fat number 2 fit. It's my website as well. And if you want to come experience what conscious fitness is all about, I am hosting a retreat here in Hawaii on the Big Island. The August one's already sold out, but I do have some openings in October of 2024. If anyone wants to come do a conscious fitness retreat out here, we will be going rucking, obviously. We'll be doing things like breath work and cold plunge and sauna and going on some amazing hikes and do some really fun excursions. So that's available if people want to get the conscious fitness experience, but in person in Hawaii. So that's available as well.
How long is that? Is that like a 7-day thing? What is that?
5 days. 5 days.
5 days in October.
Yes.
Wow. I'm going to have to talk to my husband about this. That sounds awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you for coming on.
Okay. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
And then to all of our listeners, make sure that you like and subscribe to this on whatever podcast, however you listen to podcasts. So we're on Apple, we're on YouTube. I think we're on Spotify as well now. So make sure that you like and subscribe so you get all of our stuff. And then check out all of Drew's social media stuff as well. Leave us a review and share this, please. The information presented, including any materials discussed, referenced, or linked within this podcast, are for general educational purposes only, not the practice of medicine. No doctor-patient relationship is formed from you listening to this podcast or utilizing any of the information provided. I am a doctor, but I am not talking to you as your doctor. The information provided is not intended to diagnose or treat health problems, or take the place of the professional medical care provided by your doctor. If you are experiencing any health problems, including problems you believe have been touched upon in any respect within this podcast, you should consult your doctor about the problems without delay. You may ask your doctor whether he or she believes the information I have provided would be helpful to you, but you should still consult your doctor immediately and follow his or her medical advice as your treating physician. I'm just here to provide you basic knowledge about the issues we discuss so you are more aware of them and can better discuss them with your doctor. That's why we call it Back to the Basics. Join me on the next episode as we continue our journey.